everyone knows what's wrong in the product, but still they will live with it and wait for somebody else to prioritize it. And unless it really hampers the business, it's not gonna get a priority. And sometimes designer already have the solution ready. I have a prototype. I have spent my personal time over that, but it will still not be picked up. There will still not be momentum behind it. What is your take on that question? How do you tackle that?
Yeah. So I faced that at Ola. I faced that at our previous my previous stint at Google, right? Apps UX, where I was basically something as simple as designing a great spec for enterprise tables. Now the table the table component that we had in Google's admin console that you see today, right? If you go to like a user list or a groups list or apps list, every table used to be different, and the table had all of those tables had like different features and different sort of functionalities in very inconsistent ways, right? What ended up happening was a collection of two things. One was replicating, basically, sorry, not replicating, but identifying like how much time it took us to maintain those tables and the discrepancies there, and to actually how much time was actually spent in like maintaining different backend APIs and how the representation was different in the front end for each one of those, and how much of that could be saved by just investing a lot of time in making the spec the same, right? So I spent a lot of time in meeting all the designers in those individual parts of the product that they worked on, and identified like what the gaps were, right? Like how different is it from where we want our table spec to be. So that was a lot of my work, and then I collated all of that, created like a much better spec like I think 3.5 4 months later, right? Like I collected every feature requirement that each one of the individual teams had, made a list of them, and like created the better spec.
Right.
Then I collaborated with my engineer to create like a good case study for why we needed to do this. So it wasn't about just like a better user experience that you put out to the user. It's also about how much you save, how much you time and money you save internally, right? In maintaining the different code bases and the fragmented code bases.
Right.
And what you do is by making it all the same, making it all consistent and like something that serves multiple requirements across multiple parts of the product, you actually create a much better case study for multiplying the effort you are putting in today for many months to come, right? So if you have a better table spec, let's say 6 months down the line, you invest 6 months worth of 1-inch effort on it, you are probably going to save, let's say, 3 years of maintenance time, 3 years of, and you're also going to get a lot of time back that you would have spent in maintaining fragmented code bases when you launch a new feature. So time to market decreases as well for each one of those products, right? So it's about creating that case study, right? That worked for me in my scenario. Now, this could be very different in, let's say, a different app or a different team, right? So I think one thing that helped me make peace with this when I can't change things is to learn why the things are the way they are, so that I learn and calibrate myself when things are not changeable, right? When they are changeable, you need to identify what it's going to take to change them. But when they are not changeable, you need to make sure why they are not changeable, so that you learn to analyze the opportunities differently in future. Right. So if they are not changeable for some reasons, let's say the eng manager doesn't just agree, right? Then it's a very individual. It's an individual's position that prevents you from making that change. Versus, let's say the company is just not willing to pay the cost that it would demand in order to fix something or make something better. Then it's a company's position, and you can try to change it. And if you try to change it, you would know how much cost it took to change it. If you can try to change it and fail, that probably you have no idea how much cost it requires, right? So in that case, you can either grow to learn to appreciate what costs go into changing that, like how many people's minds you would have to change, how many people would you have to convince, how much better does the solution that you have needs to be, what is that delta, right? Like what is that gain delta that it needs to be in order for somebody to be convinced about implementing it. So it's about that, right? Like you would either come out victorious by paying the cost, or you would basically realize that there is no equation, there is no exchange possible, there is no purchase possible, and then you would say, okay, fine, let's move on, right? It's a lost battle, it's a battle that you don't want to get into, and then you move on. So that's how I see it. When I'm pretty sure that even any company you may be in, not all battles are lost, right? There are definitely battles you can start winning, which then turns people to you for solutions. I saw that happening at Ola as well. Right. And what happens is like you start with a fragmented code base, you start with like a really quickly written code that doesn't support a lot, that's not written with taking a lot of feature proofness into account and all of that, right? So you're accruing a lot of
Yes,
debt.
in the
We
last
talked about
podcast.
that. And then at some time, right, at some point, you basically are left with something that just is not extensible further for like making like that step function level advancements in your experience,
It's
right?
dead
So
end.
the code is just not able to support it, right? So how many ways can you spin your story into justifying why that step function improvement is needed? Is it good? Is it going to open up new business opportunities? Is it going to open like basically new ways to like create new use cases that are not possible today, right? Or is it basically like a 0 to 1 improvement that you're talking about, or is it about like one taking something from 1 to 1.15? 1 to 1.15 is a whole another conversation versus 0 to 1. Like, hey, I'm actually opening up like something completely different, right? Like with Ola, what we did was like ride sharing as a flow that we built in that you can see on my portfolio. We thought about like revamping the entire driver app so that we could support ride sharing as a whole another avenue for the business, right? And there was a lot of conversation already, so we didn't invent it. We facilitated that through the design. So it was a great case study into like how when you redesign an app, you could support newer businesses that are not possible before, and by doing so, you can justify the additional cost that will be required to pay in order to make that happen, right? So it's all about that, right? And I know like this is not like a specific binary answer, but it really is like that in my eyes, right? Like it's not binary at the end of the day. It's all about circumstances and what specifically is happening in your company.
Like using data to build a case, using ops and workflows to build a case, using other people than anecdotal evidences, scalability as an issue. How much time we're already spending maintaining, and how much it's costing the company. Gathering that sort of case and individual bits will not only help us realize that the problem statement, what it takes to change that better, what will it cost to change, but also helps us build a case where we can at least get the conversation started, right?
And I know, like, I'm not saying anything new, right? But what I've realized is across companies, right? Even in a company like Google, the problems you solve don't really change. They're the same problems. It's just
Right.
it's just the people you solve them with change. People change, the circumstances change, the market changes a little bit, your users change, but the internal organizational problems about like, hey, nobody listens to the designer, or like nobody pays attention to like this great solution that I have.
Right.
Everybody has great solutions, right? Like probably if you talk to the PM, the product manager probably has like 5 different ideas in their head that they're not able to execute. Right. So people are not blocked on ideas, people are blocked on conversations, right? So if you have conversations, you will realize that your ideas have been tried before, or your ideas have been explored before. It's just that they probably were not the right idea at that time. Your job is to bring those up again and see if now is a better time, or now is the more suitable time to bring them up. And then now is the team with changing people and changing priorities probably is a better time to execute them now. Versus if some idea doesn't work today, you can shelve that and say, let me revisit this idea in 6 months, and I'll probably see if it's a better time then, right? If it's still not a better time in 6 months, try again in a year, right? And that's literally how like it all comes in cycles, basically.
Right. And that almost brings us to the about of our session. It's we have 6 minutes left, so we're gonna take. I'm quickly gonna take a photo with my iPad. The weirdest thing to do. Meanwhile, if any of you have quick rapid fire questions for Hardik, feel free to shoot them. And I'm gonna just do that. Okay. So, I mean, gotta have an arrangement for everything, right? So we have a lot more questions than we could cover during this time, right? And any of the questions, there are some brilliant questions here, which I would love to talk about, but all of them would, go past the Instagram deadline of 1 hour of live. So we have 5 minutes, Hardik, if you feel like picking up any of those questions. For example, impact of design is going to be like a huge topic. In fact, me and Rahul and a bunch of other folks, 4 other speakers, together had a panel discussion around measuring design specifically. If there's a quick one you want to, Hardik, pick up, is the only thing we're talking about to quickly cover is how do you sell your design without sounding like a product salesman? Without sounding like a salesman.
general answer to that.
I think building a case that you talked about, is that part of it? Like, what you already spoke about.
Yeah, I think definitely the case, or like in my example, what I've done is bring user quotes, right? People love to quote users, and like if your company is light on those, putting an interaction on a slide, and next to that interaction or next to that mock, if you show like how users reacted to it in pure like little words, how users reacted to it, is a slide that I get most kudos on and most like claps on, because that's the perspective nobody else most likely is able to bring into the company. PM is not going to go talk to the users. Only you have that advantage. So I think that's one way I have like I've tried that wins battles, right? Like, hey, why should we do this? I mean, you see how users reacted to it, right? So it's a no-brainer that we go ahead and do it. I mean, I'm overly generalizing, but largely that's
brilliant. I think I'm gonna start doing some of that as well. And that truly brings us to the end of our session. And the last quick question that I really wanted to cover, it comes from Apur Pandit, our good friend, and it is, what is the best thepla recipe? So do send him thepla recipe. He's looking for one, as usual.
So I can tell you this: the best theplas you can have right now are the ones you have at home. So stock up, don't hold.
Stock up, don't hold. Stay at home, stay safe. And I see a lot more questions coming in. We're going to probably do another live next week or whenever Hardik gets time in within the next 10 days. And then we can follow up with all these questions and let us know in the comments what did you think about this live. And do check out Hardik's newsletter. It's on Substack, and you can follow him on Twitter. He's SV Pandya on Twitter and on Instagram. So do follow him there. He's very active on Twitter, and his newsletter is amazing. You should go check it out if you haven't already. And what is the URL of your portfolio, Hardik? If people want to check it out.
Yeah, it's don't.design.
So don't design is Hardik's portfolio. I love that URL. And thank you so much for joining in, folks, once again. And we're going to do more of this. And we probably will, again, like DM me right away if you guys want to participate. Just DM me your portfolio if you want to participate in the first portfolio review. We'll set it up as soon as possible, and we'll go live on YouTube, where we can probably share our screen and one after the other take two designers and give you a review of your portfolio. There will be minimum benchmark we'll keep for the quality, so everybody can benefit from good examples, bad examples. So it will be curated, but please send in your portfolios. And thank you so much once again, and have a good night. See you, folks.